Hey everyone. Listen to this headline from CBC News, of course, Feminist Central, right? Without us, and this is in reference to International Women's Day, without us, life stops. Women urged to go on strike for International Women's Day. So without women, life stops. Now, I will admit, and because of the amazing women that I do have in my life, is I'm very much appreciative of what women do. And like I say, I'm the kind of guy that I don't pretend to pick any sex over the other. We need each other. My wife recognizes the same thing. We need each other. Men are not replaceable, and neither are women. So I appreciate, respect, admire, and love all the beautiful things that women can bring. I love actually this saying. I've seen it passed around a few times, and it's actually a great little saying, more along the lines of with women, um, you know, you give them food and they create dinner. You give them house, they create a home, right? And I mean, there are so many things that women can take just something like a resource and then and turn into something very beautiful and something very amazing and something that we all appreciate and respect and admire. I sure do. My wife does this on a regular basis. But to get to the point where you're now, and this is kind of where I'm talking about, where and you know this, right? These feminazis, and what we're really talking about are women in positions of power, whether it's in it's all parts of government, all branches of government. But they have become very entitled in their mentality. And they actually believe, because they have the power of government backing them, right? The mysticism of using the force, right? Although that's the thing. They don't recognize that the enforcers they use to carry out the orders or their edicts are predominantly men, right? And because if we had a police force that was full of nothing but women, yeah, probably wouldn't work out real well, right? Because there are some things that men need to be respected and admired for too, is our strength. And this is not something that, like I say, look at it. I mean, go ahead. Now, there are exceptions to the norm, but you will see as a general statement, men are stronger than women, physically. I mean, just, like I said, there are exceptions to the rule, but yes. But to get to the point where you're now, and CBC, the way they're presenting this, and females are the future and all this shit. I mean, that's more divisive, right? If they want men to respect and appreciate women, right? You don't do it by trying to make women out to be men superior. Yeah, you're not going to get too many men to try to jump on to that bandwagon. Well, you might get some betas, but these are the kind of men that women actually hate, and we see this all the time in our own personal lives. Women don't genuinely respect or admire fucking beta men, those that are conformist or subservient to their own preferences or ideology. If you find a man that way, and I've seen women that have found them, right? They have no respect whatsoever from them. They want to control and dominate and dictate their lives. So, and these are the women that do get pissed off, and these are a lot of women that thought it was a great idea, that whole pretense, that whole concept of being a strong woman. Well, if you push that too far and you think you can overrule or override, men's natural strengths, then yeah, it not only will it not work because you can't override or overrule natural, like men in the private sector, are natural strengths, right? But even in the public sector, well, yeah, if you can use force to control and dominate them, but are they going to respect you? Are they the kind of men you're going to want to admire? I think that's a big part of the premise of why these women seem to be unfulfilled and very mad at men. Well, yeah, you've created a situation where you rule and dominate over men, and the men that you look at, or like I say, if they realize that you use the power of government against them, if they use the same power of government against you, I guess you get pretty mad about that. But that's the thing. In the private sector, in the free market, that's the thing about public sector versus private sector. It's like the market, right? Because the market is when you're talking about the private sector, you're just talking about people that have no coercive powers or mysticism of having the ability to rule over anyone, right? So they have to function in the market. And that's where everyone has to deal with that natural equilibrium. Find that proper balance. In governments, you don't have to find no balance. You can use the stick, right? Beat people into doing that. Well, once you've beaten someone into submission, are they someone you're going to respect or admire? Obviously not. Let me read on. Women's rights are human rights. Well, actually, no. That's another sign they're carrying here in this particular article. No, actually, no. Human rights are human rights. I don't say men's rights, even though there are a lot of people now because they're trying to counteract the narrative from the woman's right because it's all political, right? But no, there's human rights. Human. So race, creed, culture, sex, religion, all those things. We're all humans, right? So no, women's rights aren't human rights. Human rights are human rights. Women around the world are being urged to ditch the dishes and skip work today to mark International Women's Day. That's another thing. And I've heard the pushback come from some women, even in my own personal life. It's like, well, wait a minute. How the hell can I afford to keep taking days off for all these goddamn women's movements or marches, right? Or protests? Well, obviously you can't. So look at who's putting them on. Well, you know who the kind of people are that putting these things on. They're mostly government workers, right? These are people that can take, up to a dozen days a year of sick days. And if you don't use them, well, I guess some ways they're no longer allowed to accumulate. So, hey, might as well use them, right? Might as well use this free paid vacation to rail against the state. Oh, but meanwhile you work for the state or to rail against the patriarchy. Well, where would that patriarchy? How would you have a patriarchy in a country that would have political power over the people? Oh, through government. So you're raising against a political hierarchy that's in the very institutions that you choose to work for a paycheck. See, that's the thing. Like people like my wife, like I say, all the people that I know, all the females in my life, my mother, the ones that never went into government work, they don't have any arbitrary authority or power to dictate and control the men in their lives. They have to use persuasion, the power of persuasion. And if it doesn't work, well, they have to suffer the consequences of whatever happens, right? And the ramifications. Whereas people in government think they can keep using the big hammer, the big stick against each other. And they wonder why it's not working out so well for them. No wonder why your work zones are so toxic. Well, yeah, like I say, you couldn't pay. My wife has said the same thing. You couldn't pay a lot of people in this world, in this country. You couldn't pay us enough to want to go into these bureaucratic institutions and function in this. Oh, the fog. No wonder they're all on opiate fucking prescriptions, right? Opioid prescriptions. That's probably the only way they get through their day. Or the fucking couple bottle of wines in the evening, right? But anyways, yeah. So I'm not going to read the whole article, but that's just the first part of this. Of course, CBC promoting it. It's a great thing to divide the sexes. They always do. But here's another article. This one is actually from Amanda Carpenter from Politico. She seems to have a little different look on things. How a day without a woman could backfire. Yeah. 15,000 public school children are being kept out of their classrooms in Alexandria, Virginia on Wednesday. So all these kids are staying. Why? Because their teachers and their principals, right? They're not sick. Their schools are not being renovated. Nothing is wrong with the schools at all. Rather, a group of teachers decided they'd rather engage in political protest than do their jobs, shutting down the entire school system and leaving working moms and dads scrambling to make arrangements. So, yeah, see? Think about the kind of women that can be that politically active, right? They got multiple levels of bureaucracy and protection so that they can do this shit and get paid for it at the same time. So it's not like they get fired because they got unions. Plus, they work for the government. Like I say, this is the great divide. So when you look out today on the landscape, whether you're Canadian, American, or anywhere around the world, in the modern Western developed world predominantly, when you look and see who these women are that are willing to do this. They're not people in the private sector that are actually having to go out and work for a living properly, that to do all the things that has allowed these entitled fucking women to get to the place where they can actually function in this world, where they can sit upon their pedestals and look down upon the rest of us. But the women in the private sector, or the women that don't hate men, you know, people like my wife and stuff, that actually have to go out and function in the private sector, they're not going to be showing no solidarity with any of these ladies. So when you look out on the landscape and you see who these are, to me, this is just a great and a perfect example is, oh, look. So that's the kind of woman, that's someone that I have a mad amount of disrespect for. That's this kind of person that is someone that hates me for being a man, right? That's the kind of person that looks at males as their oppressors. That's the kind of women that fall for the narrative, for the rhetoric, for the bullshit propaganda put forth by the political class, the feminists, the feminazis, right? The special interests, the collectivists. Look at on the landscape and pay attention to who these ladies are that are out there protesting, right? Because like, hey, and I'm not a psychic, but revelations will come to light to realize that, oh, look who they are. Yeah, they're mostly government workers, super entitled women that are a little bit scared, a little bit fearful that they're now losing a little bit of their political power, where they're losing their grip on being able to control and dominate the narrative, right? That's really what it's come down. That's the great divide. The women that'll be out there protesting aren't the kind of women that good, wholesome, genuinely respectable men would ever hold in high regards. These are the vile, despicable people that are using their power, the power of government, to mess with men constantly, continuously. And now that they think that they might lose that capacity, oh, they're pissed. They're outraged at the very prospect, at the very concept of losing their political power, the political clout. That's the truth of the matter. You can deny it all you want, but it's still going to exist regardless. It's Canadian Libertarian. I love liberty.